welcome everybody that's just joined. Welcome to our seminar this morning. My name's Laura McFarlane and I'm the director of the LEAP programme. And I just first of all just want to go through a bit of housekeeping in terms of how today's session will run. So the presenters and panellists will be the only audio or visual interaction throughout the session. You and no other attendees will be shown or heard. Just to let you know that we'll be recording the session so that we can upload it to our website after the session has ended, so other people can see it. Throughout the session, you will be given the chance to ask any questions, which we'll answer as part of the Q&A sections at the end of the presentations. And any questions that we're not able to respond to today will be responded to as part of a written response and shared after the session has ended. Any materials or resources that we share today will be sent via email at the end of the session. There will be polls during the session which we ask you strongly to participate in. It will give us a real sense of what you're thinking about the issues raised and some points to think about. So expect polls to pop up as we work our way through the session. There will also be a small, very short survey at the end of the session which will pop up once you've logged off of the webinar. It will automatically come up. So if we're all ready to start, just want to say that I'm very, very pleased to welcome you all to our session this morning as part of our Black History Month celebrations. Black History Month was established in the UK in 1987 by a group of Black educationalists working in the Greater London Council, from those of you who remember the good old GLC days. In 1987, a week-long series of concerts and talks took place in the Royal Albert Hall, affirming Africa's contribution to history, with lots of inspirational music and talks. And that was really the start of Black History Month in this country. And reading about that, I was really struck by their kind of guiding principle, and I think something that we really need to hold in our minds going forward. And that was that Black children must be able to believe in themselves. And I think that all the work that we are all involved in, really mirrors that thought. So Lambeth Early Action Partnership, just to tell you a little bit about us, is a place-based 10-year programme. We're funded by the National Lottery Community Fund. We work with the very youngest families in our communities. And our aim is to work collaboratively with parents, partners, communities and professionals to address inequalities and to support the achievement of good outcomes for all children. We are very proud to work in an area of huge diversity, and Black History Month has given us a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the many different cultures that make up our LEAP community. We've had lots of exciting events and more to come later in the month, such as storytelling, cooking and cultural show and tell, and it's been really embraced by the families and professionals within our LEAP area, and we've had some wonderful sessions. But while celebration and recognition is important, especially at this time, it's a core value of our programme to tackle inequalities and racism through the delivery of our programme and engagement of families and communities. As one young person who was recently quoted in The Guardian, Black History Month is not just a tick box exercise. And indeed, it is not just for 1 month either. We believe that this work is our daily responsibility. It's not just Black History Month, it's also about the present and the future. So I hope you enjoyed this morning's sessions. We really appreciate your attendance today. And I will now hand over to Tanya Spence, who is our People in the Lead manager, to say a bit more about the session this morning.
Hi everybody, and thank you so much for attending today. It's amazing to see the turnout that we have, so that's great. So I guess just to give you a bit of a background as to what we've been doing, we've recently created a platform to talk and explore the area of race and inequalities with our parents and volunteers. Whilst we're still committed, you know, we're very much committed to this work, we are still learning and listening, and I think that is really what today is all about. There is still so much to learn and so much to do, and I think, like much of the work that we're doing around change, we are likely to bring about real changes when we're working together and promoting and creating an awareness. So it's fantastic to be able to facilitate a webinar that looks at the issues of race and inequalities and provides additional learning and opportunities for taking further action. So as Laura said, today there'll be a series of polls. We'll have a presentation by Agnes Bazawa, Chief Executive of Africa Advocacy, in relation to the work that their organisation does, which has a focus on working effectively with their community. And we're also joined and delighted to be joined by Dennis Onyago, Programme Director, who'll be taking any questions you may have off of the back of their presentation. There will be a 10-minute break at 11:45 before an interview with Jamal Carley Campbell, who is a local early years educator, and he'll be talking about his work and experience as a Black male early years educator. If you do have questions throughout the day, please submit them. We'd love to learn more, and I might actually just take this opportunity to do a bit of a shameless plug. We are doing a whole host of events for our parents and young people. So if you are working with families within Lambeth, I'd love to just remind everyone that we are, you know, go and have a look at our website, leaplambeth.org.uk, and click on the What's On tab to see some of the great stuff that we're doing around Black History Month, which have all been co-produced with partners and parents. So I guess without further ado, we will now take part in the first poll. Okay, so what percentage of the population in the LEAP area are from Black or mixed Black heritage? Okay, I think everyone has submitted. If you submitted B, 30 to 40%, the answer is 36. Okay, I think that was our first poll. We're now going to pass over to Agnes from Africa Advocacy, who will be doing a presentation around cultural competency in light of the work they're doing within the community.
Tanya. Hello.
Yeah, we've got you, Agnes. You're on.
Okay, thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Agnes Bazwe. I'm the CEO of Africa for Africa Advocacy Foundation, and we work across London, but our main offices are in Lewisham, Catford, in fact. Yeah. So today we are going to talk about cultural competencies, and I'm going to mostly be giving examples around the work that we have been doing, and you know, just to get people have an understanding, because we interpret things differently usually, but just to, you know, to give you an idea as to why we are talking about culturally competent services. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide, please. I'm just introducing Africa Advocacy Foundation. We started in 1996, and we work to support, empower individuals and families experiencing multiple disadvantages, as written down, including ill health, violence, isolation, language difficulties, cultural barriers, faith sensitivities, and health and other social needs. Could be complex issues associated with health, but also maybe not understanding the system, not being able to access services, and so on. We have 7 board members, trustees, 15 staff currently, and we also use the support of 40 volunteers annually or more, especially when we have had COVID now. We are using quite a large number of volunteers. So we're a small organization, but we are quite grassroots. Next slide, please. Our activities, Vogue, which is FGM, and other harmful cultural practices, and also domestic violence, sexual reproductive health services, including HIV, for all communities, Black communities, including African communities, Caribbean, and other migrant communities. Recently, we had a lot of people from Syria as well, and and other places such as Yemen also coming to access sexual health services, especially young people. And we also work with faith communities. We also provide training on intercultural competencies. We also work with survivors, whom we call expert patients, because we believe people are the best experts of their own needs if empowered to address them well. And we also work with young people, including young carers and unaccompanied children. And so, we have several activities that overlap in most cases, but we've tried to streamline them according to the activity. But you can find that outreach will actually interlink in all other activities. I had forgotten our elderly people as well. We also provide services for our elderly communities, and we do social events and also digital inclusion, which has become very, very apparent, especially during the COVID situation. So I'm going to talk more. I'll pick up 2 topics that I hope I'm being heard properly. Sorry, I can hear echo in my, hello?
We can hear it as well, Agnes. I'm not quite sure what the problem is. If you keep going, we'll have a look in the background and see if there's anything we can do here.
Thank you. I'm going to pick on 2 areas of work that I want to demonstrate why we talk about cultural competencies. For example, I'm going to talk about domestic violence. When we say we provide services around domestic violence, we are not a frontline organization that provides services on domestic violence, but however, we do address cultural issues among families to ensure that we prevent escalation of domestic violence. So, for example, like last week, I was called by one of our service users. He had lost his parent and traveled to his country of origin. And then the wife called me that they don't have any food in the house, and yet they have 4 small children. So I did ask, so what's the problem? Why don't you have food in the house? So the answer I got was when the husband left, he gave his bank card to the brother as a guardian to shop for them food in the house. And unfortunately, when the husband reached wherever at home in Africa, the brother, there was a need for him to send money to his brother. So he sent the money and he left the wife, his in-law, and the children without anything. So you can imagine, you would think that when we talk of guardianship, you would only think maybe it is in the Middle East, but it's actually in this country, which is also being practiced among people of African origin. So we had to come in and say, you know, your wife and your children, especially your children, comes first. And why don't you trust your wife to give her money so that she can be able to look after her own children, your own children in the house? Why do you give your money to the brother? So he said, right from home, we never give women money. If a woman wants something, a woman has to ask for it so that we can go together and we buy it for her. We never give the wife money. So I went back and asked the wife, I said, how long have you been in this country? She's been here for 8 years. She came here on spousal visa. So I asked, how do you feel about not being given money, and then your brother-in-law is given money for the children, and now you're looking money for the food, which is affecting children. They're being hungry, and you are now asking us outsiders to support you as an organization, and yet you are receiving money, especially government benefits in the house, which you're supposed to be looking after the children. She said, oh, I don't mind not being given money, but as long as the things are there, I would really, you know, as long as the children are eating. But for this time, it has been unfortunate because we lost my father-in-law. My husband had to go, and then there was need. Then I said, but did your brother-in-law ask you that he should send the money to your husband? He said, no, they just do it. The only thing is I see food in the house. So in this case, you can see how some traditional or cultural practices can affect the entire family, especially children. So we had, instead of reporting this, we had to call a meeting with the family and the extended family, and then talk to them about the need to support their children first, the needs of their children being paramount, and also to ensure that the wife has access to the family money. That is, so we made sure that she now gets a bank card, and she makes sure that she accesses money, and she goes out to buy her own food. So in that case, if we did not intervene, that has been going on for 8 years. And if it was not for COVID, when there is no money, she used to go to the mosque to ask for money to buy for the children food when the husband has taken all the money. And she did not see it as a problem because where she comes from, women are not given the money to look after the families, but they are, and the children all together looked after by the husband. So you can see how certain practices can actually affect the children's development and also cause domestic violence within a home, although not physical violence, but it is causing negligence and also destitution, because then the wife has to go around and look for money to feed the family, but cannot confront the family to say, where is the money, because of fear of tradition or cultural practices. And then the second issue that I wish to talk about is also the training, which is the intercultural competence training. We've got a lot of service users that come back to us and say, you know, I was talking to the professional, and this happens a lot, especially with the GPs, because the GP doesn't have time. You know, they can allocate you maybe 10 minutes, and that is enough for you to say whatever you want to say. And so this lady has been going to the GP asking for antibiotics over a period of 3 years. And she's been given antibiotics with recurring infection on and on. But the doctor has not taken into his understanding to ask, what is the problem? So she told the man, I had type 2 FGM. And the doctor doesn't really understand what type 2 FGM is, but the doctor has not bothered to call other maybe community organizations or other professionals to find out what this lady is talking about literally. He knew it was just a wound with recurring infection, so he had to continue giving the lady antibiotics. Until a certain time, the lady was not passing urine properly, and her kidneys became affected. So when she was in hospital is when it was discovered that she's been reporting to her GP for over 3 years, and recurringly she's been given antibiotics to treat the infection. If the GP understood what FGM does to women, especially on their genitals when they are cut, then that GP could have made an immediate referral for this woman to be supported, not only physically, but also emotionally. And that's why there is need to have, referral or cross-working or interagency working among organizations. So in most cases, the main agencies think that community organizations do not maybe have the expertise or lack the capacity to manage or to work with people in the community, but they forget that within those community organizations, there is enough experience and learning that can support the individual, and then we provide a holistic service if we are actually working with together with the mainstream services. So linking up in terms of working is very, very important, especially when we come across people who are suffering or who professionals do not know what is really affecting their health. It's really key. So there is another issue where I'll just also give you an example again. 4 years ago, we were called by one of our service users in Peckham. And this gentleman had an altercation with a wife at home, misunderstanding. And the wife called the police. When the wife called the police, when the police came, they handcuffed him. And when they handcuffed him, he was bleeding. When he started bleeding, then he told them, he needs the things to be removed. So they did not want to remove the cuffs. But then he told them, he said, I don't want to have a big wound on my hand. I think he was trying to twist himself to be free. Then he started bleeding. So then he said, but I'm also HIV positive. So when he told the police that he was HIV positive, he was actually thrown in a police cell. And when he was thrown overnight, none of the police officers came to remove his handcuffs because of fear of contracting HIV. Nobody came to him up to morning. And then in the morning, they did not even tell him whether he needed a representative or anything like that. So in the morning, when they came with gloves and removed his handcuffs, is when he called to say what had happened. When he went back home, of course, we had to make a formal complaint with the police in Peckham, what had happened. And we also advised him to seek legal advice, which he did. But the fact is, this prompted us to go back to the police station and ask for training, because we had to train them on sexual health and also HIV and STIs especially, and to tell them that if you touch a person who has got HIV, does not necessarily mean that you're going to be infected, as long as you're using the correct equipment, such as gloves. You don't have to let a person sleep in cuffs in the cells overnight just because he has said I'm positive and he's bleeding. You cannot remove cuffs for fear of contracting HIV. So you can see a lot of when we talk about intercultural learning, is to do with knowledge, whether the person has the knowledge to support the individual who is presenting with the need in front of them. Secondly, it has to do with skills. Does the professional have enough skills to support the person? Or does the person presenting for support empowered enough, skilled enough to ask what they want, also to present their needs? And secondly, is the attitude. Thirdly, is the attitude, because if professionals have a particular perception or attitude towards a particular group of people, then the way they act affects the way they support them. And like yesterday when I was talking to to Laura and the rest and the group, David and so on, I was saying, as an African woman, when I was growing up, we were taught not to look men in the eyes. In fact, when men come home as a young person, especially a girl, you kneel down and greet them. It's a tradition. In most cases, in some traditions or communities, if you don't do that as a young girl, you are spanked because you are disrespecting the older person or the man. And so in most cases, when African women come in this country and they are not empowered enough to look a professional in the eye, when they are talking about their issues, the professional would think maybe they are creating things. You know, they don't believe them. They usually take them as people who are lying. So that also, it's a matter of understanding. They have not taken the steps to understand or even to ask, why are you not looking at me? Is there a problem? Then maybe the person can explain and say, you know, you're a man. I'm not supposed to look after you. I mean, to look at you in the face. You know, this is my tradition. This is how it works. So it also takes about empowerment. If we empower people, they get to leave traditions that are not really important to them, or I may say not really beneficial, which are not beneficial to the people. Because when we, last year, I'll give you another funny example. Last year, we were called to a school in, it was in Fulham. Yeah. The child had seen, when they remove socks, when other children remove their shoes, it was summer, and sit down. These were small children, preschool. When they sit down on their mat, this little girl would start kissing the other children's feet. And then the teachers were concerned. So the teachers called us and say, what is happening here? You know, no, they reported the family to the social services, because they have talked to them several times and the child is still doing the same thing. So in their mind, they thought maybe this child is actually seeing bad behavior at home, being the reason why the child is behaving like this at home. I mean, at school with others. So they talked to the family several times. When the issue was continuing, they informed the social services. So the social services started procedures, you know, against the family, invited them to meetings. They held strategic meetings about the family to talk about, they want to know what is happening at home. So the mother called us and said, I need help. So we said, what do you want? She said, you know, every time my husband comes from work, you know, traditionally, I wash his feet when he comes home and I clean them nicely. And as a sign of love, sometimes I kiss him on the feet. And it seems that is what my little girl has taken to school, is doing it, but I don't know how I can talk this and tell it to the professional that this has happened, and I will make sure it doesn't happen again. But it seems they're seeing me as a bad mother. So, you know, those are how traditions can affect the family and also the development of the child, because what the child is seeing at home, what is happening, that child will take it out. We've seen a lot of children swearing at others at school. It's because sometimes it's happening at home. Can I have the second slide, please? So the next slide, please. Hello?
Sorry, Agnes, there is a slight delay. It will come up.
Sorry. Yeah, so when we talk about migrant families, you know, we talk about diversity, you know, ethnicities, we talk about language, we talk about cultural perspective and faith sensitivities. So cultural competencies is more than just learning about the culture of the person, but understanding, having in-depth understanding of what it constitutes for a particular culture, and whether we take steps to empower that community or the person to say, you know, this is not acceptable. You shouldn't be doing this. I know it means it's of importance to you. This is how you have been taught, but in this country, it doesn't work like that. We're in the modern world now. Some of the traditions that are not beneficial to yourself or to your family, please, you know, don't carry it on. And also to have better insight sometimes of situations. majority of the people that we work with, they have been traumatized. For example, we have people who have got recurring traumas. When we had FGM, when we had the COVID situation, people who have had FGM have come forward to say, when we remained alone, the issue that we went through, the torture, is recurring in my head. I don't know why it has come back, and it happened 30 years ago. But because this person has been moving on with people, talking, enjoying life and doing so on, they have never had the time to sit down and think about what happened to them. When the COVID situation came and forced them to, to start thinking and, begin to, wonder what is going on around us, or why are we alone, then the nightmares start coming back. And that is causing a lot of mental health among the people we are supporting. So people have very complex health and social care needs, a lot of it, that some of them are even frightened to come out of their homes, even after the lockdown has been eased. We've had a lot of elderly people who have gone through war situations. They can't even go to a supermarket to shop, even when the social distancing is the lockdown or the social distancing measures are being eased. Some of them can't even go there. We've had a lot of elderly people who are relying on acquaintances because they are so much used to going to the bank. They cannot shop online. They fear people will scam them. They have to go to the bank and get their money over the counter. And now, because they can't go there for fear of contracting the virus, they have to rely on people, give them their PIN numbers to go and get the money from the cash point. So you can see how situations become, create vulnerabilities among people who are already vulnerable. And until a person understands why are you not really even venturing outside your road, they will not understand the situation because they do not know the background of this person. We've had a lot of young people here afraid of the police. The reason why they're afraid of the police and they do not report what has affected them or happened to them is because of their previous experiences. In the countries where they have come from, the police has become the aggressors. They have treated them so badly. They have had very negative experiences with the police. So it takes time to empower, especially those young people who have been trafficked and brought in this country and unaccompanied minors, to have that confidence to say, when I face a situation of risk or when I'm being exploited, I call the police. They call us instead. So we have to talk to them, explain, work with them, then ask them, please, can we with you report this matter to the police together? Is when they say yes. So being the reason why we train volunteers in the community that understand the culture, the language, and the faith sensitivities, but also come from particular countries that have experienced war. For example, like from Somalia, from Sierra Leone. We've got volunteers that come from those regions that when a person comes from that particular place and they need help, they are easily supported than getting somebody who do not understand them at all. Can I have the second slide, please? So I think I've already talked too much about factors that influence engagement. So mainly it's language barriers, lack of knowledge, and difficulty navigating the system. Some of them actually could speak English, say, oh, okay, hello, how are you? They speak very well, but they do not internalize and understand the things that they're talking about, but they can speak English, but sometimes because they've just learned the English here, within a short time, you would think, oh, most professionals think, but she was speaking English. Yes, but she'll not be understanding what you're doing, the procedures you're taking. And then sometimes they even give them forms to sign that I consent to such and such thing being done on behalf of my family when they do not literally understand the implication of what they are signing down for. So it's really, you know, when you're signing up for something, you have to be made aware. That happens a lot within social services. We've had children being threatened to be removed from home. We have come in sometimes last minute. It has taken us a long time to work with the professionals sometimes to bring those children back home. So it's because the professionals are assuming they are speaking English, they understand what we are talking about, and they know the procedures we are taking or the steps we are taking to remove their children from home. They think they know. And that's why we always campaign and say, please work with community organizations. It is really, really important. And the people that also, you know, understand most the things that go on with people, especially vulnerable communities, is peer support. When we assign a mentor or a person to work with the person who is vulnerable, or we have group discussions that bring in people that have similar experiences, it's really empowering for this person to know, oh, so this is how I can address the issue that I'm facing. And in the end, mostly the things end up affecting the children's development. Where children are, where there is a lot of trouble in the home and parents not understanding how to navigate the system, parents fearing to talk about the issues that are happening at home, parents feeling they are being misunderstood or discriminated against, that people do not understand their culture or faith needs, for example. Many people don't know, especially women, that you can actually ask to be seen by a female doctor instead of a male one. They just say, okay, go to appointments. When they reach there, they find a male doctor. And then they say, oh, no, I don't want this one. So that appointment is gone. You have to go and make another appointment. Or sometimes they come to us and complain, I went to the GP and they gave me a male doctor. So, but I said, why didn't you ask for a female one? Because you have that preference, you can ask for. So I didn't know, but now I know. I'm going to be doing that. So it's about learning, it's daily learning. Many of the people face racism and discrimination. Just last year, a lady was quite ill, and then she discovered she was HIV positive when she was in hospital. Then she could hear the nurses outside the ward where she is in the room. They are telling others, don't go in there. That one is HIV positive. Don't go there. You know, when you go there, do this, do that. And they were avoiding her room. And when they bring in the food, it's sort of just being put there and quickly going, because they didn't understand that you cannot actually contract particular illnesses in such a way. And a person hearing that, when people are whispering outside the corridor near your room, they are telling each other, professionals, that this person has got an infectious disease, don't go there. And this is 2020. You know, it's really this. It still stays on the person's mind. The discrimination lasts for life. When they are ill, they'll not feel comfortable going back to the same setting or even accessing mainstream services. That's where there is lack of trust in the services. Also, our people, especially Black communities, suffer a lot on low income. There is poverty and deprivation. We come across a lot of it, especially people of no recourse to public funds, and also poor housing conditions or homelessness. You know, we have, especially COVID really brought out people, is when we understood how people are suffering, especially undocumented migrants in this country. People who have been living with friends, people who have children who have handed over their children's rights to friends so that the children can access school, access education, because they lack papers. So they literally say, please look after my daughter or my son because I want her to go to school. And that is the issue in this country, that even the government is not aware of, that people are actually giving their children to other people because they are undocumented and they want the child to access education or access treatment. You know, it's really, when you work in the community is when you come across things that you do not think they happen in the modern world, especially in the Western world like the UK. But a lot of things happen when you're in the community. So, and there is also a lot of unconscious biasness and stereotypes by professionals. By the time a person goes for support, oh, you mean it's FGM? Okay. How do you feel about that? Why is it done anyway? You know, so the way they ask questions puts the person off from accessing or asking for support. It has happened a lot. And sometimes when we take leaflets, for example, to surgery, GP surgeries, the receptionist would tell you, no, we don't allow such leaflets here. We had to report one of the surgeries in Lewisham because we took their HIV leaflets and FGM leaflets and said, no, those ones cannot be brought here. We don't use, we don't have people using our services who are experiencing such situations. And this is a receptionist. And the GPs had to apologize and wrote a letter to us and said, you're welcome to bring every information here. And we can also support you if you can. We can advertise your HIV testing services in our clinic here. We can do that. And we are now working together. It's not that because they don't want to help, but because of lack of knowledge and the approach, how to work with communities that they do not know or understand their needs fully. Is there any other slide? I think. Just next slide, please. Could be one there.
Agnes, just as a time reminder, you've got 15 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Just points to note that professionals should examine and understand unique circumstances before initiating a support plan. We found a lot of the next slide, please. Sorry, jumped back on the previous one. Yeah, just to be mindful of the wider social detriments that affect people. Sorry, the next slide, sorry, it's gone back again. Yeah, to understand issues that affect people in general. And also take into account people's experiences. Ask the person, don't assume that, we are not the same. What is the person's background? Just because they speak English, find out whether they really understand what you're talking about. It's really important. A lot of that has created a lot of barriers to accessing services. And include the person when you are supporting them. Make sure, especially where children are involved, that we really include the parents. If we feel they don't understand, then ask the nearest community organization that works with particular groups of people. For example, AF, our phone is there. We open, apart from during COVID that you are now working at home like anyone else, but otherwise we open Monday to Friday. And sometimes we work weekends as well. And, just work, it's really important because once the parents are feeling discriminated against, it impacts on children. The children will feel the pressure. The parents will, what we say at home, especially children, they pick it up a lot. You find that they will be taking it to other children at school, which will create a certain atmosphere around that child, and then they will feel they are not liked, or maybe people are misunderstanding them, or maybe a lot of issues. And once a child starts like that, it affects their development in the long term. And it's also important to promote equal rights for all individuals, literally, regardless of where they're coming from. It's really key to make sure that we support them and include them as appropriately as possible. So that is what we call the cultural competence services. So I hope I've covered a lot or enough, but of course I'm open to questions. Anyone who has a question, please, can ask. Thank you so much for listening.
I think we're going to give Agnes a brief break for maybe a glass of water, and there's a poll next, is that right?
That's correct, Laura. So we're going to ask one more question, a couple of polls, and then we'd love to just have you submit any of your questions for Agnes and Dennis. So poll 3, to what extent do you feel comfortable in acknowledging racial and cultural differences in the families you support? Okay, so 68% of you agree and feel comfortable in acknowledging racial and cultural differences in the families you support. That's great. 27% of you strongly agree. Okay, thank you, Agnes. That was such a rich insight into the work that you're doing at Africa Advocacy, and it seems so varied as well. So just having a look at some of the questions that we have, and again, if you'd like to submit a question, just like to encourage you to do that. You can do via the pane. Okay, so I'm just looking forward. Okay, so I have a question from Kerry. What countries is it common practice that the men always control the money and the women are never given money but have to ask for what they need? So that's one of the questions.
The family I dealt with Sudanese, so
Agnes, how have you been able to deliver training to GP surgeries and how responsive have they been? So for the GPs that have been trained in understanding the likes of FGM, etc., how responsive have they been?
we work with local authorities to access GPs within their local area, and unfortunately we've had more social workers to train than GPs. I think we've only trained about 8 GPs, and that's it. They don't have time. That is what we get, that they don't have time to do that. But we still deliver leaflets to surgeries and pharmacies as well.
I've just muted myself. I have a question from Linda. Is there a need for financial literacy program to run alongside health literacy?
I think so, yes. Yeah, it's necessary, especially in empowering women that are being oppressed, I think, and also to work with the entire family, you know, to talk about issues of budgeting, and also, you know, living on low income, but with the effective budgeting skills. I think it's really necessary, yeah.
Okay, I have a question from Tom. He says, thank you, Agnes, regarding the peer support. How is this received in the families that you're working with, and are you able to engage males with this work?
Yes, we endeavor to work with the entire family. We We never work with only one person, because if we want to really achieve positive results, it's important to involve each and every individual within the family, including children if they're of understanding age.
Thank you, Agnes. I have a question from Carla. So for members of the workforce who feel uncomfortable talking about race or initiating conversations about cultural differences, can you suggest some ways to improve these skills? What are the first steps, Agnes?
I think initially is to find out exactly how they engage with, because what puts off people is the attitudes. It's not even is understanding that a person is coming from a different background to yourself. And then the way you approach, especially the questions you raise or you ask the person, will either engage or put off that particular individual. So it's really important to be, even if you don't know much, but to be as polite as possible and encourage the person to initiate a conversation from their point of view. And I'm sure you learn a lot from the individual, and you'll put them at ease to be able to start, opening up and discussing what they need to say. Yeah. But in most cases, some professionals, we've tried to discuss with some professionals, but on and on, people have come back to say, oh, this has happened in this place again, So I think it is consistently providing information, but also following on to say, this person has reported this, like we've done many times. Why has that happened, and why has it happened again? So it's really key, because one time I was taking a lady to there is a London School of Osteopathy, I think, is in London Bridge. I was taking the lady there, so we were waiting in the corridor. Then they said, before they could open the clinic we were supposed to go, the lady had visited us and asked that they are doing a study and they wanted to see HIV, people living with HIV, to see the impact of the disease or of the virus on their bones. So they wanted a few people, especially women, to attend their service. And it's quite expensive usually, but they offered it for free. So I took this lady, and when we reached there, at the counter, the receptionist asked, what's your problem? So I told her, said, we are working with such and such a clinic. They told us to bring in people. They are carrying out a research. Then she called up, said, oh, it's the Freeman HIV clinic. Can you take these people the other side? And there were people sitting there, So it is how the professionals are trained to respond to particular issues. They don't understand that HIV is a very stigmatized illness or condition. So you cannot, in front of everyone, say, oh, it's the Freeman's clinic. Can you take these people down there for the HIV positive people? I had to raise that issue with them. And I told the lady, I said, that's the last time we're bringing people here. They're not going to come back again, if that's how your service is. Yeah, so it's a matter of empowering people, but also it's the lack of knowledge on how to respond to work with people as well. It's the attitude they have.
Thank you, Agnes. We've got quite a few comments actually about how valuable this information is, and the work you're doing is so important. So it's fantastic to hear these kind of responses. Pam also said, do you find that there is an understanding in early year settings to the diverse needs of families? Are they open to receiving training from your organisation?
Oh no, hold on, sorry.
Oh, I think we've lost
your audio, Agnes, if you can hear us.
Oh.
Sorry for the technical problems, everybody. We'll give it a couple of moments and see if we can get Agnes back.
Hello?
Hello,
Yeah,
you're back, Agnes.
I'm so sorry. I pressed on the phone and then it went on emergency.
That's fine. So I'll repeat the question from Pam, who asks, do you find that there is an understanding in early year settings to the diverse needs of families? Are they open to receiving training from your organisation?
The schools that we have worked with have been very welcoming, and especially on the issue of FGM, they have been very responsive, and they have, with the feedback they have given us, they have said it has really supported them in working with families around issues of harmful cultural practices. But also, there are schools that are not receptive. The schools have told us to go through the safeguarding lead to organize any training, and we have tried so many times. And these are schools where majority of ethnic background children are, BME children, and some of them are not engaging. Although we realize that when we go through the councils, then we do provide, it's like a collaborative training, which means makes different schools come together. Then we provide that training. For those that we have worked with, yes, it has been very positive, but the schools are not as engaging as we usually think they could be. Yeah.
I have a question from Cheryl, who asks, how does somebody volunteer, and what kind of skill set do they need, and what's required in terms of skills?
We've got an application form for volunteers. We try to find out mostly the understanding of the cultural experiences of people, language issues, how long they have also been in this country, because that also helps as a mentor to guide people who are coming in. So it's not anyone. We also provide volunteer training. So really, it's about the if you want to train, if you're really eager to train, then to learn, then it's not hard to become a volunteer. It's not a difficult thing.
Brilliant. I think that's it in terms of questions, unless anybody has any further questions they'd like to submit. Give it a second. There's just a bit of feedback. It's worth sharing with you as well, Agnes. The real life examples are really helpful to understand some of these issues. So that's been really well received by some of the attendees today.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, if that's all, I'd just like to say thank you, Agnes, on behalf of everybody today, for coming and sharing, information about the work that you're doing and providing some really amazing examples about, how this work, how you approach the work that you're doing with communities, and how complex some of the work is. I think we're a little bit ahead of time, so I think we will take another poll and then break.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. Okay, so our next poll: to what extent do you agree with the following statement? The service I work for is culturally sensitive and inclusive.
I think that's almost everybody voted, so I'm going to close the poll. Tanya, if you want to give the results. Oh, David, we've got a screen share, I think.
Sorry, I think we seem to have lost Tanya, but I can give the results from the poll. So the 25% strongly agreed, 43% agreed, 25% neither agreed or disagreed, 4% strongly disagreed. And off the back of that poll, we had another one, which is below. What do you think would help your delivery in the context of cultural understanding? And I think you can have more than one response here. So. Okay, so I think everyone's voted. So 44% thought there should be increased number and prevalence of Black role models within the sector. 59% thought there should be improved understanding, education, or awareness of cultural norms. 43% said improved partnership working across the sector. 27% has stronger leadership, and 48% all of the above.
Yeah, welcome back everybody. It's Laura here. Hope you had a good little break. So we've got a couple of polls ahead of the next session just to get you thinking into the space, and then we will be showing the video interview between Tanya and Jamel around early years. So I think you can see the first poll now. So if you'd like to start completing that. Okay, most people are voting now. Okay, I think we're still collecting a few responses, but just to let you know how people are voting. So 12% have said between 5 and 7%. Roughly half of you, 42%, have said 3 to 5%, and 45% of you have said less than 3%. I think I'm going to have to be advised by somebody else on the call in terms of what the right response is in terms of the answer. I think it's less than 3%. It's very small numbers of men working in early years.
Yes, it's less than 3%.
Thank you. Okay, and one more poll before we go on to the next section in the film. So if you could contribute and vote to this poll, please. Great. Well, I mean, overwhelmingly, people have voted for all ages, but there are kind of 4, 5, and 2% votes for the other ages. I mean, I think that obviously in the space that we're working in, obviously we want to be able to recognise the importance of black male role models throughout the life course, but obviously it's critical that that starts at an early age. So that leads us very nicely into the film. Tanya, do you just want to introduce the film before we show it?
Yes, certainly. So a couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Jamel Carley Campbell. He's an early years educator. He took the time to share his experiences of working in the early years setting and also being a black male. So in the film, you'll see he'll be sharing his words of wisdom in relation to diversity in the early years sector, something that we're very committed to doing more around. So yeah, please enjoy. So Jamal, thank you for joining me as part of our Black History Month webinar. I'm really happy to have you with us. I know you're very passionate. And I guess just starting with the first question we have, you know, you're an early years educator. Did you always plan to work in early years? How did you first get involved? And it'd be really great to hear about what your friends and family think about your early years work and your journey.
Well, first of all, I want to start by saying thank you to you, Tanya, and the guys at Leap. Big up yourselves. And yeah, man, how did I get into it? Well, do you know what? I didn't always plan to work in the early years. My journey kind of started by accident. First bit of work I did working with children was with Connections. Don't really talk about it, but it's the start. Like my cousin, he was a youth worker, brought me to Connections in Woolwich called, I think the place was called The Place, a CAF. And I used to do some supporting work there. I was really young at the time. And then afterwards, you know, going back to, you know, it was risky business at the time as well, because I'm from Lewisham, you know, but I used to love it, love the youth club and games and all that kind of stuff. And then after a while, just came back home, came back to the ends, you know, and was just loitering. And on one occasion, I was walking through the Woodpecker Estate in New Cross, and my uncle saw me, like, and he's a youth worker, and he said, "What are you doing? Like, where are you going? Come inside and help." And then from that point, started to help, started to support at the youth club, became a regular. And then he said, "Why don't you go and get a qualification in youth work or something like that?" And I was like, "Do you know what? I'm going to look into it." I signed up and did a health and social care course, a GMVQ. And on that course, I had to do, I think it was around about 4 placements. One was in a youth club, which I was working in already, so that was good. A school, a nursing home, and the last one was a nursery. And when I worked in a nursery, It was in my local area, a Short Start Nursery and Russia Green. I just loved it. I just enjoyed it. Parents from the area, they knew me as well, so they were comfortable with me being with their children. And yeah, that just kicked it all off, you know. And I've been working with children for 19 years last month, you know, 19 years of service working with little ones, you know. So, and that's what got me into it. And at first, you know, people in my family were like, oh, what do you do with the children? Do you play all day? And I was like, nah, do you know what? It's not all about play, you know. There's observations, there's theory, you have to give feedback, you know, you have to support parents, you know, build up the relationship with the parents, with the children, and so on. And there's a lot of science, you know, that goes into being an early years educator, practitioner, and so forth. And I even like got to the point where I even got one of my cousins, you know, to come and work in an early years setting. I got my brother to now, he's on an apprenticeship now. He works in an early years setting, you know. And yeah, man, my family, they're good with it, you know, because I've basically informed them of what the work is, you know, and what it is that we do in these settings, you know. It's not all about playing with Play-Doh and painting and messy play and all these kind of things, you know. And yeah, man, they're all happy, man. They're all happy with what I
Sounds
do.
like you kind of, you know, show people that actually this is the real way in which this can be, and potentially kind of change some perceptions.
Yeah.
You know, I guess it's really interesting because, you know, just talking about perceptions, people often have perceptions of what early years workers might be, who they might be, what they might do. You know, as you were saying, it's not all about Play-Doh. How does your experience as, in particular, a black man being working in early years, you know, what challenges have you encountered, if any? And, you know, if you have encountered any challenges, have you found ways to overcome them?
Do you know what? I wouldn't really call them challenges per se, you know, little minor obstacles here and there. But I think the main thing comes with the fact that, you know, the early years itself is not understood. As I said, people think it's just Play-Doh and play, and water or messy play or whatever it is. People's perception of the early years is that it's woman's work. That's the, you know, the way it's seen by society. But when you get into it, you realize that there's a lot of males in the sector, even though I think males only make up 3% of the staff, you know. And when you break that down into black males, something like 0.1 black males work in the early years. And at first, you know, sometimes you come against these little things, these little silly things. Like once upon a time, I was going to a highly known establishment in the city, a nursery I was working in, and one of the security guards at this setting thought I was there to deliver a parcel because he wasn't a regular, you know. And when I spoke to the head of security, he was like, no, he's been there for years. He's been there for the last 3 years. What are you? And that person came under, you know, some heavy, you know. But it's silly little things, you know. They don't expect you to be who you are, you know, and to do what you do, you know. I've got gold tooth. I'm 6 foot. I'm a big black man. You know what I mean? Yeah, like I just don't fit the criteria. But then it makes you ask yourself, like, what does fit the criteria?
Yeah.
You know, and that's men or females. You know, there's different types of people in the world, and I feel like there's different types of people in our community. So it's only right that those different types are illustrated within the sector. You know, and that's where we come up against these indifferences, these challenges. You get me? Because people are not used to seeing my face in a setting playing with children. They're like, who's that? Is that one of the dads? Or who's that? That's one of, do you know what I mean? And after a while, when I was working in whatever setting I go into, you know, after a while the parents become fully accustomed to me because they hear the way I talk, they see my passion, and they get that I understand children, you know? I'm not just here to be a part of the furniture. No, I do this. I have experience in this, and I've been very successful at what I do. You know, so yeah, man. There's challenges, but I feel like having people like me there breaks down all those challenges, those walls, those, you know.
It's really interesting. I mean, you've just touched on challenges, and LEAP have identified a really strong narrative from parents and community partners alike around the need for more positive Black male role models within education and play settings, and in particular for Black boys. So I guess in your view, how important is the need for more Black males to be engaged with early years work? I mean, you said that, you know, there's a really small amount of males and an even smaller amount of Black males. What do you think those challenges are? What do you think those obstacles are? And do you have any sense of anything changing?
Do you know what? Change will come. I think that people just need to know, our community just need to know that they can do this work. They can be teachers. You know, I'm not an academic, but my peers, other consultants, people in my industry see me as an academic. You know, I've had to earn that. I've had to read. I've had to study. I got expelled in year 7. I got expelled in year 11. Like, I come from the streets, you know, but I've had to change that narrative and use where I've come from, the dynamic of where I've come from, to how do you say it, give me the energy and push, you know, to make differences in children's lives that come from where I come from, you know. I've got some statistics here, yeah, and it talks about only, well, this is BME, by the way, and there's a few Black mentions as well, but because the figure is so low for Black people in education, they just round it up into the whole BME thing. But it says only 3%, yeah, that's 435 out of 14,500, yeah, of head teachers from local authority maintained primary schools, yeah, are Black or BME. When you start to look at those figures, yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy. And is it because they're not qualified? Is it because they're how do you say it? They don't have scope to be in these roles? No. It's because of other factors, you know, imposter syndrome, the pressures of the job, you know what I mean? Challenges that they face. A lot of people start off in education, especially in the early years. For a lot of males, they start off working in the early years and face, you know, issues to do with maybe their race, or maybe the way they look, the way they hold themselves, and so on. And they say, do you know what, forget education. I prefer to work in Sainsbury's because the pay is better in Sainsbury's. Even though I want to make a change, you know, I prefer to do something else because I don't fit. And that's where it is, you know. When you don't see people that look like you in these positions, in these places, as part of the hierarchy, as part of the structure, you know, you then can't envision yourself being in those seats, in those rooms, at those tables.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, man, the statistics, like when you start breaking things down, like it's just like, wow, like 7.6% of the yeah, in 2015, yeah, 7.6% of BME people make up the teaching workforce. You know, you start doing those figures, it's just like, what?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly shocking how small the figure is for Black and ethnic minorities in, well, specifically males as well in early education. Do you have a sense that anything is changing? Do you think that things have changed over the years that you've been, you know, in early years?
Yeah, do you know what? I have seen changes because I'm starting to link up with other guys like myself. Do you know what I mean? There's a wicked nanny. Yeah, he doesn't like the word manny, but a nanny, yeah, called Josh Simmons. Bad boy, Josh Simmons. About this, like, he's different. He's a Black man. He's like my age group as well. and he's brilliant at his job. He's so passionate, do you know what I mean, about working with children, you know. And there's other black teachers as well, you know what I mean, and that's male and female, you know, and we're all connecting and linking up and sharing practice, you know. And we're also calling out, you know, the systematic rubbish, you know, the wannels. Like when you go to these education conferences and so on, you don't see our faces on those tables in those places. People are calling it out, man. People are calling it out. There's a lady called Dr. Muna, brilliant woman, speaks up about systematic racism and racism in the curriculum and restructuring and approaches. There's a lady in Birmingham called Liz Pemberton, the Black nursery manager, Black woman, powerful, does webinars and things. And there's so much, and it's not only to do with race. You see, when people see like Black people in education or Black people in a position talking about systematic racism and structure and so on, they think, oh, it's an attack, it's an attack. No. The reason why we're addressing these things is because it affects us all, yeah? For instance, imagine going to a setting, yeah? Your child going to a setting in a place like Shropshire, that's predominantly white, yeah? And the resources in that setting do not reflect who that child is. How do you think that affects that child later on in life? Emotionally, cognitively.
Yeah.
And then you reverse it. Imagine a child coming into a setting in, say, Southeast London, a grassroots setting, and everything's just Black. And they don't see nothing that reflects them. It's going to affect them, you know? And what we need to be doing, like the reason why we talk about these things is because inclusive practice needs to be done across the board. You know, it needs to be done within the recruitment, it needs to be done within our curriculum. Like I want to open a book and see some Black faces, man. You know, I want to open up a textbook and see some Black faces, a maths book or science book, wherever it is. I want to see people that look like me. I want to know about Latimer. I don't want to just know about Alexandra Bell or whoever it is. Do you know what I mean? Whoever. I want to know some other stuff that reflects me and makes me feel as important as any other person or any other race or any other culture. You know, so that's why it's important that, you know, we have different faces that sit in these seats.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. I think that's so important. Do you think that there is a critical link? I mean, you've talked about how important it is for young children to see people who look like them, to feel that they belong. Do you think that there is a critical link between positive male Black role models within the early years and later years?
Yes, most definitely. Growing up, who do we see a lot of the time? I know it's a stereotype thing, but who do we see in the hood? We see the rappers, we see a few footballers, sportsmen. We see the gangsters, the criminals. You know, these are the people that are showing us something. These are our role models. You know, these are the people that we look up to for influence. You know, that you see, there's this thing called mirroring. You know, whatever we see is what we can turn out to be. So if we're gonna see badness around us 24/7, badness is the only option that we're gonna think that we have. You know, but there's so many different people that are doing great things. Black authors, Black doctors, Black barristers, Black politicians, Black business owners, CEOs, people that are successful. They're doing well, you know, and those things need to be promoted more. You know, when you turn on the news, all you're seeing is negativity. You know, but if a child is seeing an individual like myself from early, that helps them build up that positive imagery and makes them know that, Raj, you know what, I can aspire to be something, you know. I can aspire to be this positive person. Not necessarily to do what I'm doing, but to do something else that's great and live out their dream. you know. And then on another side, there's young children that have never interacted with a black person before, and all they've seen is the reactions and actions of their parents to a person that's black. You know, I can tell you a story. I was on the underground once. I was going to an award ceremony. I was in suit and tie. I was with my white colleague, and I've got on the train and I started to walk towards this lady sitting down on the train. I'm wearing suit and tie. This woman grabbed her bag like tightly, and looked in front of her nervously like I was going to take her bag. And my colleague was the one that pointed it out, and she was laughing. She said, look, you're going to steal her bag. We're like running a little banter. Do you know what I mean? And imagine that anxiety, yeah, is something that was taught to her.
Mm.
That's something that's been instilled in her from young. Just like some children don't like to eat peas. It's the same concept. You're forcing them. You'll get to a certain point where the experience is so bad. They no, I don't want to eat peas. And then you see adults that don't eat greens and don't eat vegetables. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And
They just
black
don't
people,
want to entertain.
exactly. Oh, I'm a bit, you know, I don't, black people, no. But if you've had people in your settings, you know, in those positive roles, and on your TVs, on social media, you know, doing positive, you know, and it's being highlighted and shared, trust me, man, it's gonna cause such a chain reaction, man. I'm telling you, such a chain reaction. We need more of it. We need to promote more of it.
So thinking about your experience, Jamal, you know, what impact do you think you've made on young children as a black role model? And you quite clearly are.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any anecdotes that you're happy to share with us?
Do you know what? Today I was on I was like, one of my godbrother called me, and he was like, do you know what? Yeah, he goes, nah, cuz real talk. I don't want to big you up. Da, 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 da. It's like, listen, I just want to tell you, you're a legend. He goes, do you know what? You see, when you was young, yeah, like you proper took us lot from the street. You was young yourself and brought us to the youth club and had us all in the youth club instead of having us on road. Do you know how amazing that is? Last 2 weeks ago, a little boy, I work in a SEND school with a reception early years class, yeah. And one of the little boys in there, you know, every time he sees me, he says, Brown, Brown. And he rubs his skin and he rubs my skin.
Oh.
And I'm like, you know what? This is why I do this. This is why I do this. Little man seeing me, looking at himself and then looking at me and saying the same thing. You know, that there is just, you know, it gets you right here, you know what I mean? And there's negative things as well. There's like a little boy in the older year and he always goes, he's a gangster. He points at me, goes, you're a gangster. And I'm like, no, I'm not, I'm a teacher. He goes, no, but you're a gangster teacher. And I'm like, yo, I'm not no gangster, I'm not no nothing. I just teach, yeah. Just because I look like the guys from your hood or your area, yeah, and I talk the way I talk, doesn't mean I'm a gangster. But you know, this is the way we're portrayed, man. And I think, yeah, man, that just hearing these things, you know, just makes me know that I'm in the right profession, you know. I'm on the right path and I'm in the right place.
I think you're doing an amazing job, and I mean everything that I've read, and I mean today even the discussion, you can quite clearly see the passion that comes through, you know, for your work in early years, but also, you know, to around equality and making things much more diverse and inclusive. I guess today, by the time this kind of goes out, we talk about today, for anyone who's in the webinar, it's about 7:03, you know, during the evening. By the time this is broadcast, it will be quite early in the morning, and it feels very strange to be doing this via Zoom, with obviously the pandemic happening. So you know, with this and without the fact that you're not here with all of the attendees and seeing them all here, what would you like to say to all of our webinar attendees who will be listening at the time that this goes out? How do you think that they can be making a difference? And what do you think should be the key takeaways in light of what's been discussed today?
I've got two things to say. The first is just acknowledge the good. You know, sometimes we can sit down and dwell on the negative. This one got stabbed, that one got shot. Yes, acknowledge the negative. Acknowledge it because the negative is there, but acknowledge the good. There is so much good happening, and promote the good. Share the good on your social media. Share the good between your friends. When you're having a conversation, we're from this block, or that one from this corner, or that guy from Northwest, or that person from Birmingham, or this house got raided. No, talk about how my man from down the road, you know, Mark or Steve or Paul got their degree, or Thomas or David just open up a new food shop or a hair shop or something like that. Promote that. Then we need to be sharing, you know, more positives, because there's so much positives that happens in our community. The second thing I'm going to say is this, yeah, it's a concept that I've created, yeah, and it's called curriculum, community, workforce, yeah, and it's a full circle, so it could go anywhere. It could be community, curriculum, workforce, community, whatever it could be around here. But what it is, yeah, is that the workforce that we employ are the ones that work with our children, work with the community, yeah. If we have a workforce that is diverse, then we're able to then, you know, work with the current curriculum, which isn't so diverse, but we're then able to mold it and bend it like a Rubik's Cube and slot all the pieces together in a way that works for us, which then in turn makes the curriculum diverse, which then in turn makes the community, the workforce diverse, yeah, and the community diverse. So it has a rippling effect. The curriculum is what teaches the community to become the future workforce. And if we can then mold and bend those mindsets, those mind frames, then, you know, the future community is going to be one that is so inclusive, a community that embraces, you know, all things cosmopolitan, because that's what our community is. It's cosmopolitan, but a lot of things have been whitewashed, you know, a lot of things have been whitewashed. So community, curriculum, workforce, you know, that's what's important right now, people. You get me? Diversifying that workforce, diversifying the mindsets of the community, and definitely diversifying this curriculum. We need to be empowering our communities. And this thing that's going on right now, yeah, levels, there's racists out there and all that rubbish, but it's not a race thing. Real talk, there's racism out there, but it's a class thing. It affects us all. You get me? There's a big difference between wrong and right, balance and imbalance. And there's so many reports that show this. And when I'm talking about, like before, I was talking about the education workforce, and I was talking about how in senior roles, you know, it's just mad, you don't really see us, but that is across the board. That is in Parliament, that is in the NHS, that is in the police force, that is in all things that make our society spin. There's an imbalance. But then on the ground, you see us. On the front lines, you see us. You know, and that's what I want to say, man. Keep rising, keep growing, keep climbing, man. Don't let no one tell you you can't do it, because you can. You get me? And that's what I have to say, man.
Jamel, It has been fascinating. This has obviously not been our first conversation, and I have loved listening to you, and I'm sure our attendees at this webinar will agree. I think you are amazing, and I'd just like to thank you for being a great, speaker on behalf of our Black History Month webinar. So I just thank you very much from Leap.
Blessings, man, blessings. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going back into the webinar.
Great. Well, that was incredibly inspiring, and I've seen that there's been some really positive comments in the chat. Somebody wants to use the film, Jamel's film, to show to one of their teams. So that's to their team working in family support. So I think that that's a real positive endorsement of somebody that's very passionate and has got a very strong message for us all. Tanya, any thoughts of wrapping up, kind of conclusions?
I guess, going back to the original, review of why we have run the webinar today, it's exactly to do, I think, what both of the speakers have reiterated. It's to raise awareness, to be talking about these issues, to keep learning. I think in the short time I've been in my role at Leap, I've learned an awful lot, and I think it's really easy to potentially think that, we've got it all worked out, and I think that there's still so much more to do. And I think, like Jamel said, it's all aspects of the work that we're doing, and it impacts the work across the board, from the communications we give out, from the services that we design, to the reach that we have, to the way in which people respond to the work that we're delivering, the partnerships that we have. It's so relevant. So, I think, just to reiterate what Agnes and Jamal said, we need to keep learning, we need to keep inspiring as well our communities and the people that we're working with. We need to look at ourselves. I've made a personal commitment to actually prioritising time to read more about race and inequality, and that goes beyond, so including understanding things like disability more, and I think just if we can make some small steps and small changes for ourselves and within our organisations, that's a great place to be. And so for me, that's a bit of a wrap up, and I'm just really pleased that we've had so many of you attend today and just listen to this work.
Great, thanks, Tanya. I think that's a really good way of wrapping up. And as we started off, I mean, Black History Month is just really a bit of a catalyst for these discussions, and absolutely this work will be running like letters through a stick of rock in everything that we do, and it is part of the core of Leap's ambition. And we're really pleased that you've been able to join us for this really fascinating webinar today, and hearing kind of voices really directly from the front line, and throwing out some challenges, throwing out some things for us all to think about, throwing out some points of action, which Tanya's so well reiterated. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for participating, and please don't log off kind of straight away. As soon as the webinar is ended, there will be a feedback form for you to complete, and we'd really appreciate it if you would do that. So thanks to everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and have a good weekend. Thanks very much. Bye bye.